There you go.
Today's date is Monday, March 25th. A curriculum committee meeting. Robin Willoughby is here, and Karen Conroy, and Frank McQueen, and Archie O'Leary, and Chase is in for Kelly Lundrum, and Tim Kriver is not here currently.
All right.
All right, so first up, I just wanted to show, I brought some copies for everyone of the revised world language standards. So they started working on them, probably like 10 years ago, sort of the idea of, they wanted to move away from what's called legacy teaching model. So essentially, if any of us took a language in high school, the way it was taught to us is not the way languages should be taught now, not surprisingly. So it's really moving toward, if you see this one that I gave you that has sort of the side by side, so you can see what it what it was and then what it is now. Personally, the anchor standard one of communication. So in the past, it was maybe a lot more writing. Things are definitely based on accuracy. Is the accent mark here? Is this the correct tense? So on and so forth. Instead, the idea really is moving toward, is the language students are presenting comprehensible? Meaning, there may be tons of errors in their grammatical errors. They may have some mispronunciation, but what if native speaker be able to understand what they are saying?
Can you communicate the point you're trying to make?
And you get your point across. Yes. So that's really the main difference they've moved away from. And again, so they have the interpretive, essentially, do you understand whatever input it is you are receiving? Are you listening to something? Are you reading something? Interpersonal communication is as it sounds. Can students communicate with each other or the teacher? And the last standard under that is presentational. And that is however they are presenting information. It's not presentation simply standing up in front of the room. So can they present the information to you in a written format or spoken? And a little bit of a difference. And as far as the other anchor standard too of culture, they really want to move more toward authentic resources. There's always a push to authentic resources. They want to make sure students are really ready for real world language use. So if they are somewhere and they see an infographic about something, can they actually understand what they are reading? And could they respond appropriately if they really needed to in a real world setting, as opposed to, please fill in these blanks and here's a vocab list with 100 words.
Right.
Okay? That really doesn't get you anywhere. I've never once, when buying a plane ticket or ordering something in a restaurant, I've never had to give that grammatical information. Nobody cares. Okay. So again, it's important that we're really moving toward students actually genuinely using the language. Now, the second paper that I gave you, the least colorful of all of them.
And that is it. That is communication and culture. That is right.
Yep.
Okay.
Can I ask Dan a question?
Absolutely. Oh,
Okay. Dan, is this kind of relating a little bit to the changes in the science standards? Like, it seems like it's more hands-on, the science standards seem to be more applicable to kids' understanding and use.
I don't know if I would say that there's that much similarity.
So,
I mean, there are overall, there's progression in educational theory, and they both reflect that in terms of, experiential learning. So I'm not sure there's a whole lot beyond that.
Do you see any connections or threads that seem like where the state is going with like their different kind of learning standards, like Bloom's taxonomy maybe, or?
I mean, go ahead.
well, for this one, they want to kind of move away from that.
Okay.
Honestly, because oftentimes what happens during observations is something I might look for in a science classroom or a math classroom doesn't really apply here. For example, at the lower levels, it's actually recommended that students don't do tons of partner work, spoken partner work, I should say, because the idea is you want to give them at those lowest levels the maximum input possible. So that means the teacher is really giving a lot of input to students. That way they can hear the way it's supposed to sound. rather than students making errors, speaking back and forth to each other. The teachers, probably bouncing around the room to listen to people. It doesn't get corrected. That's what sticks in their brain. And they then remember it incorrectly. And then they're saying it wrong back and forth to each other for the whole speaking activity. So that's why, so moving a little bit away from that, more definitely, students listening and then kind of taking it in before they can actually produce. So this one that I gave you shows, again, similar, but then what is also included on here is important possibly moving forward, is their new standards for modern languages are here. And then if you turn it over, it goes over the standards for classical languages because they do follow a different set of standards. Certainly they are not going to be speaking at length or, anything like that. And it is trying to move more toward a communicative aspect. I know traditionally the Latin teacher gives the students texts that they have to translate and then sort of look at from a historical point of view. But they are getting more into actually requiring Latin students or those taking ancient Greek or ancient Hebrew, any of the others from that category of languages to produce as much as possible.
Not just
verbally.
translate.
Yes. Which goes back to, if you mentioned, I said that there are a lot of teachers that teach world languages that are moving to no desks because it goes along with the theory of we don't want them sitting writing something. We don't want them sitting here translating ad nauseum, as fun as some students actually think that is. You do want them actually moving about to kind of experience and engaging.
Are the assessments going to become more oral assessments then?
No, it
That's a
is
great
still
question.
going to have the same components.
Okay.
So currently the way checkpoint A is and checkpoint B is there's a certain set of speaking tasks. So checkpoint A, there's 4 different categories of them. It's not going to be like that. It's not set as, okay, this whole category of speaking tasks is
Family.
persuasion. Just the least one students never want to do.
Convince me.
Yes,
you can go to the
they don't
party with your
understand what
friends.
persuasion means.
Right.
So instead it's going to, again, be more authentic, more holistic, not just, you've met up with a brand new friend, introduce yourself.
It won't be like that.
There'll be some similar sort of speaking tasks, but again, it'll be more real world that the students can actually use.
Will the process be the same where you're choosing or where you have the local piece and like right now we have so many that we go through and I worked with our world language department chair.
You mean as far as the assessments?
Yeah, for the speaking part of the.
So it will still be similar in that because New York State no longer prints one, if Voorheesville, I know they do currently use the NICAL assessment,
Right,
it's still regionally developed, it will be the same thing.
idea.
Yep.
Okay.
So it will still be yearly. Teachers will gather to do the item writing, to submit questions for it, and then go forward from there.
Perfect.
But again, as long as you're using one that's regionally developed, you have to present it as it's being presented in all of the other districts.
Exactly.
You cannot vary from it at all. The very last one I gave you that has a different color sort of steps on it.
Got it.
So again, this is kind of getting more toward, again, not just, is it right or wrong? How many points out of 100 did you lose? Again, this is what can you do? As opposed to what am I taking away from
It's
you?
more
that you
credit
couldn't
bearing
do?
than, yeah.
Yes. So instead you'll see, these are always the names that they will give the different abilities that students have. So essentially the blue ones here, novice, mid, and novice high, that's what students should be reaching at checkpoint A. So at the end of 8th grade, when they take that exam, that's roughly where they should be. Of course, yes, there's always some wiggle room. Okay. And then our intermediate low and intermediate high, that is at the end of checkpoint B. So what students take at the end of 10th grade. And then there's definitely some variability in when students are reaching the intermediate high. They may never reach advanced low. They may never reach advanced low.
That's how
I love it.
that's really, it's
Yeah.
a simplified
right?
way of
I
learning
really
and
love it
understanding.
because this you know, as I'm looking at some of this stuff, I'm getting the sense of the English language learners
Yes.
word language, you know, the way they talk about, but I look at this and it's like, this is really,
So this is how some
Well done.
teachers have gone
It reminds me of
to,
the music standards.
oh, is
Oh.
it similar to that? Yeah, so some teachers, you know, I know have moved to like standards-based grading. So
Mhm.
there are world language teachers that have moved to
Use these.
this. So students will see on their paper with these descriptors, you know, is this novice mid? You might even ask a student, you know, if your goal is to get to intermediate mid, here are some things that you should be doing. Here's what I'm looking for if that's what you're hoping to get.
And it's funny you say grading, because that was one thing, is like, I wonder how this impacts your grading. I was gonna ask you, like,
Mm.
how did you shift your grading processes on this one? or-
Some of them, so like, definitely speaking, I have shifted it. But that's, again, it really gets students' minds differently because when they think I have to speak Spanish, they think speak Spanish like they're going to sound like I do.
Mhm.
And I will say, no, 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 no. Many years from now, maybe you will.
Yeah.
Right now, I always tell them, think of if you were the equivalent, you might not like this, but to like a kind of preschool or
Yeah.
kindergartner. That's where you're at. That's what your speech is going to sound like. That's what your writing is going to look like. Which is
And that's
very,
okay. That's where you are.
that's where it is. It's frustrating as it is for children. We all know when they can't communicate, they just screech. So the same thing for middle schoolers.
Right.
They get very frustrated because sometimes they do want to tell me this whole elaborate story, either spoken or written, and they can't. And that's where questions of things like AI and Google Translate come into play. When that feeling of frustration is in there and what can they do? So again, we want to make sure your students have language they can actually use.
You know, when you were talking about the legacy versus can you get your point across? I'm
Yes.
thinking my daughter, last year did, 2 different things in France. She spent a couple weeks in Paris, Alliance
Yep.
Française, and then she went to Sancerre and did a week at Coeur de France or whatever it was called. And that was the thing that she took away, is that she let go of, you know, my daughter, that kind of, I gotta
Yes.
say this correctly.
Yes.
She said, I finally stopped worrying about grammar. I just got to get this out and
Yes.
move. And her growth, because she's just trying to talk,
Exactly.
versus worrying about, is it passé comme ça?
Yeah,
Is
it's rather thinking through in
Yeah.
your head every single step. Is this agree here? Is this agree here?
Exactly. Just
Spit it out.
Yeah,
Spit it out.
get my idea out.
Exactly.
Makes a difference, I think.
Yep. So again, moving away from legacy teaching to more towards, you will hear the phrase comprehensible input. And so that way, what I am saying to students, is it comprehensible? And then what they are getting back to me, is it comprehensible? And you'll notice that really on this,
Yeah, it's all the way in there.
all of it is, are you comprehensible to a native speaker?
Right.
Right? Will they understand you're somebody learning and you're making mistakes? Absolutely. But can they get your idea? That's the main objective. Yes.
And our first, checkpoint A will be,
The current 7th grade class, so
So when they're done
next
with it.
year, they will be taking the brand
the new one.
revised standards.
Awesome.
That was really informative. Thank you.
That's really
Oh, thank
great.
you. Tell you lots more random info if you'd like about this, but
I love that too.
It's nice that it's finally, it seems attainable,
it is.
right? Like,
It is.
for some kids, this stuff is so like, they're so afraid of it and they don't like it, and
Yes.
it kind of turns them off from it. This makes it a little bit more approachable for kids. I
I
know I would
have-
rather have this when I was in school.
Yeah, and
Oh, for
I
sure.
have in my room, there's something that some teachers will do, and it's basically using like scoops of ice cream. So basically novice, mid, you're at like 1 scoop. Novice, novice,
Yeah.
and it keeps graduating to 10. And then even when I show them the example, that's like a full-on banana split, there are still grammatical errors, things are still misspelled, but it's still at the level it should be at.
Yeah.
Yes, so that's sometimes too, I'll give a reminder for what I'm expecting. I will say, now, I'm only expecting like 1 or 2 scoops. If you give me a banana split, you did not do this work. So let's make sure you're only giving me like 1 or 2 scoops
Yeah.
here. Yeah, and they kind of, and sometimes
That's funny.
they'll funny, sometimes they'll ask, well, wait, what do you want?
You want
Just-
scoop?
is
2
this-
scoops.
Yeah, I'm like, just like 2. Just give me like 2 tonight. That's it. Yeah. Again, what can they actually do is,
I like that.
is the main objective.
Awesome.
Okay, new course discussion. Oh, let me go back. There it is. Okay, so we received a new course. Karen can kind of explain it to you where we are. And there's a lot to balance in understanding if this one is going to be offered or not offered. And it deals a lot with class sizes, purposes, budget, and different components of that. So we really want to have a discussion here, get your input as a board of what direction you kind of want us to go in, and then move from there. The previous, Karen was explaining to me a few years back before I arrived, it was, we're not going to offer a class to kids of 3, right, or 2 or 4. And, that would not be this class. This class would be offering it to a group of 3. So, it would be a definitely smaller class, and it comes down to some budget stuff. So I'm going to have Karen start, and I'll interject as we go into it.
Sure. So, yeah, and we were just hoping, like you said, just to reiterate some parameters, some help as we look at courses as they come up. And, as you know, our courses are usually off, we ask for proposals early on, but this was something that, had been requested by interested students. So we wanted to pay mind to it and think about that. It is we do AP Physics, as you know, and this would be AP Physics 2. So there we talk about the population. You only have 13 students in AP Physics 1 this year. So if you had 100% of people wanting to do more, you'd only have 13. We have, maybe 6 who've shown some interest. I think between scheduling and ultimately signing on to it, that could be 2 or 3 students. I don't know.
Usually you're at least going to lose 2.
Yeah,
Typically in the
yeah.
schedule.
So, the idea of how much something costs, is that balance, right? So, we also know that when we have been looking and encouraging more classes, more course ideas, it's really been to be open to more students. We have quite a lot of AP courses. We're very proud of all those AP courses.
This is another AP.
And this is another AP, right? So we're
But Karen,
yeah.
sorry, you're saying that we would be encouraging other things as well, not just more APs.
Well, we've been doing our elective push.
Yeah, so
we
we had, yeah.
Yeah, so we've done other elective pushes, and we've had many conversations here about, developing more curricular ideas and asking staff to be able to give more curricular input on different electives that we could offer. Yeah, that's something we've discussed.
So there's, it's a full year course. There would not be a separate lab section that would be a part of the course. There is an additional lab equipment estimated at $5,000. And I'm not sure if there would be an AP course cost. The teacher doesn't believe that he would need that. How sometimes people go and do the training for that. That's a cost. And of course, summer curriculum time. The teacher has not asked for that, but I feel like we do that for everybody else. So to give a couple days for that is probably another, 1,000 or something. So there's also the difference between, is it something we could offer as a 6th class? Or is this something that would be a 5th class?
So I'll explain that.
Yes.
So, yes. So a full-time teacher is 5 sections, right? So you're having 5 sections part of your day, and that's what you get your full stipend, your full salary for is those 5. Anything over for the contract is $2,000 per semester or $4,000, and that's called the 6th. So this teacher would already have, the way they're scheduling it, they're thinking he might already be at 0.8 next year, meaning there's already flexibility in his schedule. So they're thinking that based on possible student need and student request, he'd be maybe deficient in a course and be able to make him full-time. So they're right, Karen, that was one of the conversations that come up. Well, they were concerned about need of students that want to take the courses, the amount of courses it takes and preps. So, and this has happened before where the teacher was going to maybe do an AIS course, be able to support that before when they had
Forensics this
yes,
year.
for forensics this year.
So there are other sections.
So there's
of different
ways
things.
that, so if you have like 45 kids in forensics and you need 2 sections, then you know what, that teacher who has that extra opening could easily go into that. So it could or could not change. The other component of this is, if we make it a 5th, are we saying do we prioritize a class of 3 for that 5th, or do we prioritize something else for that 5th? Like, again,
It could
it's
open it up
AIS,
to more
it could
than
still
2
be
people.
smaller too. So, you know, you never know. AIS classes can be 5 kids in a classroom.
Yeah,
A 6th would end up making that teacher have more preps. Because that teacher already is going to have multiple preps because of the fact that they teach a very varied array. To get them to be a full-time teacher, they need to teach multiple courses, right? Because they're very specific in that area. So this could end up being 6 preps for that teacher. I think that was one of the concerns that was mentioned of not having the teacher do it as a 6th.
So obviously you can see the pros
Yeah,
and
so there's
cons,
pros
but-
and cons of doing either way. And honestly, Karen and I's concern is we just need to understand the direction that the board wants us to look at. If we want to make a teacher full-time and have them do a class of 3 or 4, and that's the direction we're going, then we'll go that direction. We just we want to make sure that we're not misstepping on the mission and vision of the district.
So question for students who do like the earth science in grade 8, what do they
That's a
usually
great
take
question.
senior year for science? Because they've already done chem, bio.
Environmental, right?
Dan can
That's
answer.
I mean, typically, we've changed this over the years. So it used to be,
AP Chem.
that guidance would say, in order to take, you would take bio, then you can take AP bio.
Mhm.
To chemistry, then you can take AP chemistry. That's been loosened a bit over the
That
years.
was also true of AP Physics.
That's
It
what I'm
was
saying.
physics,
Right.
and then it was AP Physics as a senior.
But
But I can see the reason why you would probably listen to that, right?
So, I mean, my understanding is the AP classes cover the same material, they just move faster. That's what I've been told. I don't know if that's
Dan would
true.
be able to answer this better than any of us probably.
I know that's,
In depth, right?
I think the teachers would disagree, but
Yeah.
the student,
yeah. A lot of times they're given, yes, obviously the objectives are the same. If they're taking the same exam, fine. AP exam, they're all taking the AP exam. But a lot of times it's sort of the type of thinking or the type of tasks that students are given. Usually it involves a little bit more higher level
Analysis,
thinking, maybe a little more of the ability to work independently, as opposed to just, we're cramming in 10 chapters as opposed to 8.
Right.
It really depends on the course, but often it's what it is.
So now that it's been loosened a bit, what's the progression?
now that it's been loosened a bit, it means that students could end up being a senior and have already taken, AP Chem and AP Physics, whereas years ago it would be.
But I don't know
But
that, you know why I say I'm not positive about that? Because I'm thinking about when we have regents for, and we rarely do I have, that I can think of, Dan, do I have somebody who went into AP Chem versus chemistry for having to take a regents at the end of that year, right? So they usually AP Chem is seniors, AP Bio, I think is seniors, but it's not true of physics.
And I think it's good that there is flexibility in terms of the sequencing in science because, I think it's good if the student.
So there's 2 APs, I would say, for that.
Right.
So we have AP Bio, and
AP
Physics,
Chem.
and AP Chem. So a 9th grader
And AP Physics.
is not going to take AP Bio, correct or incorrect? They don't know
No,
that
I
answer.
have not seen that happen to my knowledge.
With bio, I don't believe we have done that yet. I wouldn't be surprised.
So that means they could take it their senior year then.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, so that's what I want to get
Some,
to is,
some do it their junior year, but yeah.
if that's not one that's there, they could take it their senior.
Yeah, so I think what happened with the flexibility with physics is because we started bringing in the Project Lead the Way courses, and our teacher was able to teach one of those.
A lot
So
of districts also do that as
So
well, where they
we
double up the
said
courses.
you can be Regents Physics or AP Physics, but it used to always be you had to take Regents first before you could take AP. So that's where I think that flexibility came
Yeah.
in
So
too.
there's still an opportunity for some seniors unless they've taken
Yeah.
AP Bio.
And there are other,
And I could check whatever that is, but
are we offering it anatomy and physiology this year?
Yeah.
I mean, there are other science
Yeah,
electives as
that's
well
true.
that aren't APs, yeah.
yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, forensics, APs, like.
Anatomy, and environmental.
I'm
that I can
looking
think of.
Did you have?
A child's transcript, so I can tell you what he took. So, okay, so in 9th grade, regular bio. In 10th grade, regular chemistry.
Mhm. Regents Chem.
Yes,
Regular.
Regents, you know what I meant.
But I know what you mean.
Not a teacher.
Right.
Um,
I knew
And
you were gonna say
then this year,
Physics,
AP Physics.
So they
So
could
next
take
year,
AP Chem
Right.
or
AP
AP Bio.
Bio,
Right.
So there's options.
some kids, and the electives,
And there are other options, yeah.
anatomy.
Although
biology.
you can always offer more.
So that's what I said to Karen. I said, instead of doing an AP Physics class, what about a physics for everybody? You know, because physics is always around us. So like an elective in that kind of regard.
Very cool.
You know, I say to my kids, oh, it's only physics. And they're like, I don't understand what you're talking about.
Or you can use thermodynamics, just focusing on first law.
We could build a car. So
I mean, it seems like there's two other options for an advanced
Science.
to do a class for 3 kids. See, I just, particularly when you look at the size of the seniors, right? Like they're a big group, or the, seniors coming up. They're a big group. That seems like not giving as many options as we should. That's my take, but
How many in physics this year?
13,
And AP, I'm sorry. 13.
AP,
How many are juniors? You know?
I thought all of them were, I'd have to check.
Okay.
so it just.
That I don't know offhand. Are they all juniors?
So just thinking about the personnel issues though, is there an issue if you don't offer the physics, is there a way to keep that teacher full-time? And I don't know who the
And that's-
teachers are.
yeah.
And that's why I brought that up, right? Because that becomes, then are you creating that position to save that position? Or then are you creating that position where that teacher could then maybe support something else, but then what are they gonna support, right?
And we, clearly we have done that, right?
But we've done that in the past before. So you would still keep the teacher full-time, but find another position that maybe supports like an AIS course or supports, students that
A
maybe are
large section
struggling,
of
Yeah, I mean,
something.
or a large section of something else.
But, you know,
But again, you're not gonna put that teacher in a earth science course because they probably don't, or they've never taught earth science or
No.
wouldn't know how to.
yeah, I mean, I guess the flip side is making sure that we're retaining qualified teachers, right? And there are a lot of people out there, I'm sure, who are teaching AP Physics,
Mhm.
but I also don't think we should create a slot. Like, we should figure out how to redeploy that person so that we can keep them. I don't know how that,
Well, I think we have that plan, that we typically have done that in the past year. And I say we, not me, I don't really have
Not me
anything to do with it. But, so the people sitting here
He's always
really don't
been
have anything to do with that, but he's always been full-time.
That I know.
So, and that would change.
You said this came from students?
Well,
One-
students and
a
then teachers.
student, yeah.
Did
Right,
they,
the teacher writes up.
okay, so the teacher wrote it up, but the
It-
genesis of it was from
The
students?
student asked.
And that's the question, right? This is, you guys are, you're right where Karen and I were.
But, a section is expensive.
so this could cause me some problems at home, but.
Why do we,
Not sure.
so take me through it, just because this seems to be what it hinges on. Why do we think it would be 3 to 5 instead of 7 to 8?
Because that's what
Nine.
guidance told us at the moment.
Just based on registration.
Based on, I'm gonna go back to
currently
AP Science,
expressed
AP
interest.
Spanish, and the number of interests that we had there. And then when we had one section of that and the way it fit in kids' schedules and the kids who actually wanted to go through with it, went down from, 13 down to 5 or something like that. So I'm just basing it on how singletons work. And kids are often excited at one point, and then over the summer when push comes to shove, they
Yeah.
aren't always as interested, because you know what? It's their senior year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's.
Yeah.
And my thought is that, the district has put it out to teachers, and I've been at the board meetings where it's been discussed that, study halls, and we really want more electives.
Mhm.
People are coming and saying, here are ideas for electives.
I agree. So, but the question I'm gonna ask then is, do we offer it as a 6th? and find that teacher another support position? Because that's what we've been doing with electives. We've been giving.
And
them
that's what we
fixed
had asked
positions.
for. We, you know,
So,
we asked our tutors to do
so I
that.
agree with you, Dan. So I think the question that Karen and I really are struggling with is, do we supplement that as a fifth or do we offer it as a sixth? As a sixth, it makes complete sense to me.
Even with the cost of the equipment.
Yep, even with the cost of the equipment and everything else, because they're teaching 5, they're helping supporting the other classrooms, and this is an add-on elective for 3 kids.
Or
5 kids or
6.
6 kids.
Let's make it 6.
Because it would not be an every other year course, because AP Physics 2 wouldn't be something where the kids are already taking AP Physics, so it's automatically goes
No.
into it.
Yeah.
So I think that's the question. Dan, what are your feelings on that?
I'm not sure if I see it as, in my mind, it should be what's best for the, you know, for me, the staffing concern should be secondary. In my mind, it should be, are we looking for more electives? Can we offer this? Will we have some students who are interested?
And then the financial stewardship.
But
of
the
that.
question though is 6th,
Is there-
you're hitting those kids and you're helping get them. The 5th is, could we get more and hit more kids and help them? Have them do it, the classes all together, and then as the 5th, he might be hitting 7 kids, and as the 6th, he's hitting 6 kids, he's hitting 13 kids altogether. So that's the question. And I don't know if the schedule's been made, and I'm making a lot of hypotheses here. I don't know anything about it.
Is that a decision that needs to be made before, you know,
Yes,
why?
because it's a scheduling
I'll
position,
say
so
for
we
the
need to,
master
and
schedule.
we're making a master schedule now. This came in late. So it's like,
on a kind of whim of like, hey, what do you think? I
Yeah.
know this is really late.
So
And I
how-
said, maybe as a 6.
how many kids take AP Bio and AP Chem in their senior year? A lot.
I can get you the numbers right after this if you'd like. Not 3, not 6.
So
Yeah.
it's more than a handful.
Mhm. I can check.
I mean, I agree with Dan, the staffing concern shouldn't drive the decision, but at the same time, I don't want to lose a qualified teacher. I mean, if there's sufficient interest, the money aspect of it doesn't really bother me, 5,000 or whatever it is for the
For the equipment,
equipment, like that
another,
doesn't really bother me. I think it's an investment in our students.
Robin, what's your thoughts?
I'm sorry, RJ, were you done?
Yeah, I think so.
Sorry.
It's okay. I think if students have the interest and we have someone that's able to teach this course that students are interested in, and unfortunately with a school this size, at those upper levels are not required, that's at the senior level, you're gonna end up with small numbers. So I wouldn't immediately say no, just because it can only be 5 students.
Okay.
But that's coming from someone who
Well,
teaches upper level
we've asked for the
courses with
board
like 5
direction, you have
students.
2
So
board members, so I'm fine with offering it then, Karen.
okay.
So the question is just gonna be is, if there's a need, and this is where it comes up, if as they're going through it, and we find out that a need and more students will be served, like let's say we have 50 kids who want forensics, and we would need that teacher in order for all those kids to get it, that teacher would have to take a forensic course and bump this one, then that automatically bumps this one to a 6th.
And do we
I think
not
we have
have,
to look at it that
I
way.
guess, okay.
I'm not, again, if I were scheduling, that's the way I would do a schedule.
And so
If
no
you're doing, you're
matter,
shaking your head, like, that makes sense,
That
right?
makes sense. And
Because
so, yeah,
High need, right?
wherever the
Yeah.
process is at this point, yeah.
and so,
If not, you make it a 5th and call it a day.
what if you have 6 kids signing up? End of the summer, you've got 2 kids.
You offer it.
We run it for
You
2
run it no
kids, we
matter
run
what.
it for
You've
1
already
kid.
made the decision to make it.
the schedule, the master schedule's already been made.
Yeah, my thought process is, when we did this with Spanish, is you're hoping you're gonna get as many people as humanly possible for the, for this higher level course. You're gonna offer it, but you're not going to not offer it. Come like 1 or 2 kids, you're just gonna do it, and hopefully it catches wind and get more people want to do it next year. If
Right.
not, you cut it and you move on.
Okay.
I hate to sound like crap, but I think that's the only way to look at it.
I agree.
Okay.
Good, right, that was very helpful, because
That is
we were
it.
going back and forth on it for a while, so we're
100,000
like.
times
we
we've
just-
Oh,
gone back
yeah,
and forth
sure.
on it.
Can I ask you a question? Kelly wanted to bring this up, if it's all right, about new courses.
Sure, this is about new courses.
So I know that it has been a goal to add more electives. And I'm in the middle school, so maybe I don't get it as much, but what are what efforts have been made to encourage staff to come up with new electives?
Have you seen anything from that?
I haven't, but but again, I'm in the middle school, so.
The department chairs are also working with teachers in the middle school. So I
The
know,
department chairs should have been really encouraging all those, because we've asked them to, so that concerns me that
And
you haven't been
yeah.
notified by a department chair.
I think that's what we talked about in the
Yeah.
last meeting,
And that's what-
was that
And
there
I'm-
was the message out.
and I can check agendas.
And we send out like the course thing saying, hey, if you have any course that you'd like to look at.
That
please
does, oh yeah, that I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what
That
we
comes
ask
out
is,
like-
so really the request should really come from the department chairs that we talked about, because Karen and I aren't gonna go find people and do that. The department chairs
But
are
we even-
oversighting the curriculum. They're
Yeah.
supposed to help move forward. They should be sparking these interests. Like, we've had a lot
We
of
just
conversations
did
about this.
like maybe,
That
I wanna
surprises me,
say,
and you've never had a conversation with any of your
maybe
department
even
on that?
in
They
January
have
where there
this
was this
At the high
last,
school level, just not at the middle school.
But not
level.
with you. See, but you guys could if you have because you have the ability for a sixth.
But let me just ask, so because there might be courses that have been brought up that don't get to this committee because it goes from teacher to the department chair to the building principal to you to
Yes.
Frank and then to here, right? Is that the right sequence?
Yes.
Okay. Are there others that have been proposed this year that didn't make it this far?
That is, again, my question is going to be, there's an administrative decision and directive that can come from that, and there's a lot of decisions that come up of why or why not an administrator would see that, but I think we've approved that, haven't we, Karen?
I think
This
we
year.
have- I'm trying to remember.
But there have been times that we've looked at things and brought it back to the drawing board.
But we bring things here when
Yeah.
when we're saying this is
Yeah.
something we support, we want to share, and we want to bring it to you guys. This was not just about AP Physics 2.
Mhm.
This was about any parameters that you guys had that we should be considering. Because my concern came up with like, what if this turns out to be 5 kids? What if this
And-
turns out to be 2 kids?
And when we ask the questions, I know that Karen has went back and asked them. There's a lot of questions get asked. What kind of standards? What are you gonna be looking at? What are your assessments? And if those things can't be answered,
Mhm.
they're gonna
They
get
don't know.
denied, right? That's
Right.
part of the process of being able to put in the program.
But if the district is trying to encourage more electives, maybe it shouldn't be as simple as this has been denied.
It's
Maybe it
not
should be
like
as
that.
simple
Well,
as.
it wasn't, I like,
Well, I think you're making it, well,
Yeah.
again, you're giving me an eye like you think it's already done. We've made a lot of conversations, I believe, but
I sat down with Dave Lawrence last year and talked
Dan,
about
is there a
flush out, how we're
specific
gonna
thing
do
that you
that.
can note
in the
that we did that with?
courses.
Or it was automatically denied?
Not automatically denied, but it might be good to communicate with teachers more about, hey, this is possible if we make these changes to it. I know that has happened before.
Yeah.
But I just know
Yes,
there are
yeah.
teachers that have put in proposals and, I think the more that we can encourage people to do that and make it a process where even if they get denied, they're willing to come back and try again. I think that would go a long way towards adding more electives. If the goal is to add more electives, there's a lot that we can do there.
Sure,
Sure.
absolutely. Those are all
You can
conversations.
share that with the department chairs and administrators.
And is there something straightforward that department chairs could show their teachers, like in order for the proposal to even be complete, to submit it to anyone, it has to have like this, and this?
We
so that
have
way they
specific
don't
questions
waste
that
anybody's
that
time.
they answer on it,
Yeah.
but
I mean, you can also have the building principals or whatever level they would get to just report up
Yeah.
what was proposed, what was denied.
Yeah.
Or, has moved to the next stage like that. Then there's transparency around what's been proposed and what level it got to
Yeah.
and why.
That would
And a
be
lot,
great.
yeah, and a lot of times too,
Good
sometimes
idea.
sometimes they are proposed and we don't have the staffing ability because of, let's say it's 6th grade, right? Well, I want to do a new course in X. Well, guess what? There's no room
Yeah.
to do that, so we bump something else out to have it.
Thank you.
Moving on.
Okay.
All right, asset accountability. I think it's important before we even begin this, it was brought up that a lot of times when people talk about data, especially when administrators talk to staff about data, staff feel attacked. And they feel like they're being blamed or they have that issue. That was brought to my attention. I want to make sure, Karen and I have talked about it. you know, and I don't know if you've ever had somebody talk to you about data. You know, teachers are very passionate about their work and they, you know, they try hard, but data is very important because it's not about what people are doing wrong. It's about what is it saying and how do we move forward? And is there a truth to it, right? Let's build a hypothesis off the data and look at the work and see if there's anything that can be done. So I want to really be very, very clear is when we talk about data, our goal is not to make people feel bad. You know, it's not about, you know, when you're having individual conversations with grade level teams or curriculum departments, it's not like, oh, you guys did bad. It's about, here's what the data is. What do you think? How do we move forward? And I think it's very important to say that as we kind of look into this. So
Something you've always done a very good job of explaining is that this is one data point
Yes.
amongst a
Many.
sea of data points.
but you know, and I appreciate you saying that, Dan, but I just, you know, I will tell you as a teacher, like when someone said to me something about my craft or something about kids, like it hurts, right? You're passionate about your work. So you know, I think that's important.
And yeah, this is ESSA accountability from state ed. It's the preliminary, but it is no longer embargoed, so we can talk about it here. But it is just the preliminary. I don't expect things will change. Or I wouldn't bother answering it. Can you go back to terminology?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Please. So terminology, LSI is now called local support and improvement. We have new people at state ed, and in an effort to
Well, they always are changing it. I know that.
this is Teresa Billington. So in an effort
So,
of
but
continuous
we know
improvement.
Teresa, and she is trying to make it more transparent and more
And
easily
more,
understandable.
yes, and not, somebody's in good standing, somebody's in bad standing, right? So it's now they're not calling it good standing. They're saying, you're going to continuously improve and you're going to choose to do that at the local level. You guys figure it out.
The terminology is just so I understand it, is at the district level or is it more granular?
They do both.
It'll be both. It'll be district and school. So, we wanted to say LSI. We wanted to say local support and improvement. You guys make your own decisions. Go for continuous improvement. How are you going to continue to grow?
That's what
Anything else there, they will give you money for, but you will be owned by the state, really. So you've got TSI, which is targeted support. I'm not really good with this new additional targeted support and improvement, so I'm not even going to talk about that. Comprehensive support and improvement comes out once every 3 years. That's the all students category. So if you're really having issues, it'll be based off the 24-25 results the next time that comes out. So we're fine with that. TSI is more on accountability subgroups. So I just wanted everybody to realize we're looking for LSI. So if you go to the next.
Just really quick.
Yeah.
When she's talking about target support groups, those are our
Demographic groups.
demographics, socioeconomic, race.
Students with disabilities,
So those are the specifics that go along.
racial. Yep. The next one you can see, again, preliminary, but it looks like we have all those LSIs, which is awesome, right? That's great. That's where we want to be. Our accountability status for the 23-24 school year based on last year's state data is LSI. Now, depending on how much you really want to look at this, I can tell you a little bit about the calculation, and we did go over this at a board meeting earlier this year. So it's you know how we have students taking, let's talk about the 3 through 8 tests, levels 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. So they're taking your level 2s, they're adding it to 2 times your level 3s, and then they're doing 2.5 times your level 4s, and you're going to get a number. And then there's 2 different ways to look at it: core subject and weighted average. So depending on what you are looking at, depends on how you divide it.
Karen really
Weighted.
understands a lot better than.
No comment.
Weighted is going to include, you're expected to have 95% of your students take the test. When you have a lot of refusals,
Which we do.
which depending on the grade level we do, the weighted is where the refusals count against us, right? Because you have to put them into your denominator in the sense that you have to do at least 95%. The core is the results of our performance based on the kids who took the test. I think for high school, you're looking at 9th grade cohort and the students who then take the test going on towards graduation requirements. I believe that's what that is. So I just wanted to mention that's how you're getting that. So the next one is leveling of the schools and districts. So they calculate the performance for all students. They calculate using those level 2, level 3, level 4 for students with disabilities, for economically disadvantaged, for white students, for Asian students, etc. Right? They go through all of those subgroups. English language learners. And after they calculate that performance for each category and subgroup, they're then going to put them in rank order from the state. So all the schools, all the high schools, all the elementary schools, and then they'll look at this. So we are going to be called a level 4 school if we are in the 75.1 to 100% top of all those schools that were ranked for each of those categories. And you can see, look at the difference between a level 2 and a level 3. So level 3, you got that, 50.1 to 75%. Level 2 is really big. Level 1 is the bottom of the bottom, but level 2 is from 10.1% to 50th percentile. So, you get hit with being called a level 2, and you could be pretty close to level 3, really quite far up there, or you could be really down at the bottom. So they will level all of our things. So on the next page, you can see these are the scenarios in which you could be identified as a school who maybe a TSI or a potential TSI or a CSI. Now, the only thing they're looking at this year is going to be scenario 1. And that's actually the next slide. It takes away all the other stuff, Frank, and you can just see.
But I just want them to look really quick though. Weighted average, core subject, EL, English language proficiency, chronic absenteeism.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
So I feel like,
Right.
I know we talked about chronic absenteeism, but I want to show you like this is now part of that component that we're looking at. Yeah. So.
And then next one, so we are only looking at scenario 1. So for the elementary, middle school, it's the weighted performance is a level 1, the core performance is a level 1, and it doesn't matter anything. Even if you're level 4s for the other 2 things, if you were level 1, if you were at the bottom of the barrel for those 2 things, you're going to be identified in this way.
Okay, a matrix.
Same thing for the high school, right? And that's the only scenario they're identifying, because I think it's still in response to everything that has happened with COVID and
They said that they're
responses.
kind of going to roll this out for yearly stuff.
Yeah. So we're still on this scenario 1. Now, this is where we are. So I kind of wanted people to take a look. We're not in any trouble, right? We're pretty safe with where we are. We're all LSI. But if you take a look at this, you can see our district, our elementary school, and our middle school. And what stands out to you immediately?
Yeah, I can share this whole thing with you.
Yeah,
instead
we
of
can.
your-
Yeah, we can.
Sure,
send
good,
it.
thank you.
safety.
So I'm obviously noticing where we're not green, right? So we have in the middle school, our economically disadvantaged students, that's under the weighted. So those students who may have chosen not to take the test, because you could see in their core performance, they got a 3, that's acceptable for sure. And the students with disabilities, same thing, maybe refusing to take the test. But if you also move over the chronic absenteeism, that's a concern. That
Yeah.
stands out to me,
Can I
right?
talk
Our
about that
economically
real quick?
disadvantaged there.
So we've done some district-wide analysis of our chronic absenteeism. So let's just look at, pick a grade, high school, middle school, or elementary. What one would you like?
Let's pick elementary.
Elementary school.
Start there.
So 8.5% of our elementary school are chronically absent.
And what are you defining as
Yeah.
chronically absent?
It's 10 or
State.
more absences.
So
That's-
it's 10% of the enrolled amount of time.
Yeah.
So if you're here 100 days in the school year and you're out 10 days or more,
Yeah.
you're considered
And
chronically
it's,
absent.
and they consider excused absences chronic absences as well, by the way.
Yeah.
So like if my kid has, we've gotten the letter at home, to be
Yeah.
very honest with you, I've gotten the letter.
Yeah.
It's like my wife goes, "What's this?" I go, "It's the letter we gotta send." But even if you're out 11 times because of illnesses, you're gonna, it even counts. Yep, it even counts.
And we know that across the state, there's
Yeah.
we've had a couple of years of very high absences and you couldn't come in because you had to be out for 5 or 10 days or whatever it is. That being
Yeah.
said, last year's average for the district was, I think, 14% district-wide chronically absent. I mean, if I go back a few years, it was probably more like 6%, 5%. I mean,
But-
it is different.
Here
Right?
comes,
It's
but here
noticeable.
comes,
It's noticeable.
It's noticeable.
but here comes a more important thing. So 4.3% of those students are Hispanic and 10%, 10.6 of those 4.6 of those students are Hispanic and 10.6 of those students are chronically absent. 13.7 of those 8.5 are economically disadvantaged, and 42.6 of those are chronically absent. So
So
our
even though,
economically disadvantaged students, and that's what we see in middle school, that's what we see in high school, is our economically disadvantaged kids. And when you look at other data points where we have a whole
yeah,
thing there.
we will share that with you
You
too.
can look through it if you want, but if you look at it, when they compare us to New York State like schools, that similar size and similar like socioeconomic,
Demographics and.
we're fare lower on our economically disadvantaged students' test
Then-
scores in comparison to others.
So when we're comparing
So
ourselves in
that was
general,
a
it
kind of
looks
a
pretty
aha
good.
moment
But
for us
when we
this year.
really drilled into that, it was important to know.
Yeah, that, and it's not huge. It's like 3%, 4%
Right.
differences. But you look at these chronically absent. That is, there's a 2 for a reason there.
Yeah. And actually, then the next couple of slides will,
I think she.
Oh, I was gonna say, it just brings me back to what we discussed in the last board meeting about trying to do something for like math supports and I think that's where we were intending to focus,
Yeah.
but really there are groups of students that need additional support,
and we
including,
need them here.
including support getting
Yeah.
to school.
That's one of the biggest issues, right? Kids can't learn if they're not here.
Right.
And if they're not here, they're not learning.
And Dan, you were nodding. I mean, I'm thinking anecdotally. you've
It's
seen it.
anecdotal, but man, does it ring true? Yeah.
And a lot of times what ends up happening is, and if you're in schools, you realize that you usually get double hit, right? Because a lot of times some of our economically disadvantaged students are also students with disabilities.
Mhm.
There's usually a high percentage correlation in school districts if you look at it across it. I haven't done the correlation here, but
Mhm.
I'm going to take the assumption
Traditionally.
that it is. Traditionally, that's how it is. So, and if you're looking, it happens.
Can you advance the
Yeah.
slide?
Did anyone have any questions before we move on with this?
Well, I mean, there's things that we can do as a district. There are also things that other, like the state or other community organizations could be doing.
Oh, we have a lot of things that we've been, as an admin team, we just
We've been
really,
talking
we've,
about this a
we've been
lot
really
this year.
looking at this and finally, I'm gonna give it to Brianna and Karen. They really went over and did a really comprehensive understanding of our absenteeism rates, more so than we've ever really done before. And now we're like, all right, we know the data says what the data says. Like, again, we looked at it and said, okay, this could be bad. Like, we get it, but how do we fix it? Right? Here's what the data says. So now we're putting that comprehensive plan together. Is what it looked like. What are the things we can do? How does it work? How do we change our structures to do that? And then eventually, what can teachers do? What can the community do? How do we reach out with those things? I was in a school district that had a high attendance rate, high absenteeism rate. And, there's a lot of things you do as a district. There's a lot of things you do as your building. And sometimes the most important thing you can do is just call a kid and say, I missed you. Where were you today? If the teacher does that sometimes, that will get, sometimes, especially if a kid has anxiety or other issues, the door is open,
Yeah, also, I mean, one of the things that we hear a lot, and, we're hearing it, so I'm not always sure of how accurate it is, but we hear a lot of, students who are out for a while, and they become so anxious about that they're never gonna be able to catch up, that they just want to stay home more and more and more and more. And so whatever we can do as a district to, the messaging should be, no, please come here. We can help you. It's not going to be a huge, problem,
Right.
I will say that I've seen more home visits this year than I have seen in the past, like 4 years that I've been here.
Which is, thank you for that, because it's been great for the admin team to be able to do that this year.
Yeah.
Are you finding any common sort of obstacles to students getting here?
So I have to really ask Brianna
Okay.
and Joe, because they know this better than I do. Because again, they're giving me the data, and then we're having the conversations on a more district-wide level. Brianna really, one of the things that we're talking about is we really need to evaluate the root cause for absences and develop action plans. We're still getting to that point: is why are these kids? Is it anxiety?
But we're
Is
seeing
it
a lot of the
fear?
anxiety for
Yeah.
sure.
So just.
Is it parents? I mean, sometimes we have a lot of kids that
Their parents tell
they're,
them
you
to
know,
stay home.
So this is elementary and middle. High school is not on here?
It's the next
It's
slide.
in it.
Okay.
Yep.
Because I mean, these are kids who can't get themselves to school.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah.
right? Like this is
Right.
on
Yeah.
the parents to
Our
a
high school is.
large extent.
So you know,
Exactly.
our high school, you can see that
Like
the light
5 more.
green is the
We've done
economically
more of those,
disadvantaged,
yeah.
right? And so it shows up, it's not a 2. And when you compare us to all the high schools in the state, we're not getting down, into that level 2, but it's still showing up in the next slide, I think, which is my last one there. To go back to Frank's point, you can see, Clayton High School, so the all subgroup, everybody, is 16.7% for the chronic absentee rate. Look at our economically disadvantaged, they're twice as much. So even in the high school where we look on paper on this accountability that we're okay,
Yeah, so
twice as much.
as of, what was it, January or February? As of February,
February, I think.
21.2% of our high school students were chronically absent. 12% of our students are economically disadvantaged in the high school, 29.2%.
So shouldn't they
those
be, so 12%
kids were
are
chronically
economically
absent.
disadvantaged and yet 22% are of the whole
29.
group, 29
Yeah,
of the whole
29.2%.
group. So it's not even matching, you know,
The
that they're
percentage.
14% of the group or 12% of the group. They're extremely high.
Can I just say, we have such a brilliant counseling staff, and I know that they do a lot of work in this area too, of trying to communicate with families and students and, you know, come to school.
Well, this is a big part of MTSS and what they're doing now is they're
Yeah.
really focusing in on this. Like this year, it's been a real big push on chronic absenteeism and it's good. You know, the fact that we know these numbers and we're looking at them and they're addressing them is important, but we want to show you more on the levels of the district and our reports. You can see how it mirrors the data that we're seeing at a granular level.
Can I just throw something in just because this always irks me and it's nothing that we can do. It's not, but for a small district that is not all that diverse, people have heard me complain about this before. When you have these subgroups, I mean, sometimes you're looking at an N of like 3 kids or 5.
No,
4
you're
kids.
not.
No?
Not on this, because you have to have at least, like, you'll see the English language learners aren't identified.
Yeah.
in
Yeah,
that-
where
when you
is
look at
that
the
cutoff?
picture,
Right.
Because you have to have 30 kids.
Yeah.
30 in one cohort?
Yeah, one cohort.
No, 30 in.
I don't think it's in one
the-
cohort.
In the building.
In
You're
the
looking at the
grade.
building.
Okay.
Right.
And they'll also now
I was
do
thinking old
2 years
school,
in a row.
sorry.
They will do,
Well, that's the other
an
thing.
accountability, so it's those same kids 2 years in a row. Sometimes, right?
Yeah, it just
Well,
seems
I mean, look at
shaky.
this. We don't have any race on here, correct? It says all students economically disadvantaged in white. There's no other cohorts. There's no special
Right.
education students.
They're not big
And that's
enough.
the reason? Okay, I thought maybe they just weren't included.
I think I just cut and
Oh, you cut
pasted
and
to be,
pasted, yeah.
again, I'll double check any of that, right?
I mean,
There you
elementary
do see.
school, look at the elementary school, all students, you have cut and pasted, right? From,
This, but it was the whole chart.
Yeah.
But it's just that they do this really long chart.
right, so,
yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
you look at the elementary school, it has different groups.
Okay, that's good.
Back in the day, like that was answering the question, like in the high school, wasn't it 30 kids in the cohort for
Yeah,
special education?
yeah,
And they
I
weren't
think it's-
identified?
and I think it's,
They
but
might
it
change
wasn't a cohort. I think it's like if you're middle school, it's 6, 7, 8, you have to have 30.
I just remember
Yeah.
high school. I was thinking it was like
Yeah.
30 kids, so I remember that.
I have to go back
It
and
was a
check
long
it.
time ago though.
I hate to
Sorry
answer,
to go
not
off
know
on
for
tangent.
sure.
No, but Dan, you're correct, and I believe the state has had a lot of conversations about that, and they're trying to
Which is why they do like 2
do
years.
this now.
And I don't know that they
That's
did it
good.
with the new
they're
stuff that
recognizing
they're
it.
doing.
Good.
Teresa Billington, I will say this is there, and Teresa she's from the area. She's worked with us. She's probably one of the smartest human beings I've ever met. Like
She knows her data
she
now.
knows her data, so and she gets it from a school level and school improvement
Yeah.
level. So it's nice to have someone like that be part of accountability now at the state.
In case there's anything else I had to look up. That's what that slide's for, because I know already a couple things I'm gonna look up, but
But again,
again,
like Dan said, this is one component, but you take that component and compare it to the attendance that we have, and then you compare it to other data that we have.
and I think that's why
If this was a physical at the doctors, they'd say you're healthy.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Mhm.
But they would say,
But if
on
you had
certain
something
points,
growing on your
yeah.
back, I want to have you back in 6 months
exactly,
to take a
or
look at
they
it.
would say, you know what? You might.
gonna
be-
run some
you-
tests.
You could cut down on your salt a little bit,
Yeah.
right?
Right,
Like, that's really
To
what
get
this
more
is, right? We're doing
exercise.
great,
But we
but
are LSI,
there's
you're
a
right.
couple issues, yeah. As long as we're
We'll
LSI. that's
support,
good.
and yeah, we are.
All right.
So just,
Last thing, the future pilot program. So we sent out a little heads up today to the staff about the use of the furniture. And then Robin, you mentioned a lot of Spanish teachers, world language teachers, see, I call myself, are moving away from having desks.
Yeah.
So we talked to David Stubbs. He provided a really fantastic kind of overview of how he can help our staff move forward. Again, Queensberry, Able Park with him as well. David said, and this is why we're targeting 610. David goes, I wouldn't target grades 11 and 12 because by that point in time,
they know how to do school.
they know how to do it.
They
So
really aren't interested.
if you're
in
targeting
having
6,
changed
7,
everything.
8, 9, and 10, you're able to start building that momentum and program for those kids. He said elementary, we can hit, but he goes, that's a whole different level because there's an organizational structure on that, which, they have a lot of stuff in our elementary school. And that,
Yeah.
changing your room is not just about your desks, it's also about changing the way that you utilize things and how you use them and everything else. So that's a much bigger conversation if we want to go down that road. So David will work with our staff come May. The staff that are chosen, again, we're not sure exactly how many staff we can choose because we need to look and see what budgetarily we end up getting from the state at the end of it. And then really how much all that equipment is. I found out today that the purchase orders have to be in by
May 8th.
early May. So I'm hoping we can push those back to the company that we'd ordered so we can get them in the fall. Because the goal is going to be have staff work with David in the fall, have in May,
Summer.
give them summertime to work with David again. Because David Stubbs is the guy who's actually designing a lot of this furniture and utilize it. And then he'll be checking in and working with the staff throughout the year. And then the staff will have components that they do similar to the Able Park staff that we shared already. So it's coming together.
But you did this as professional development, right?
Yeah.
You did a presentation and.
We have not done a
No,
presentation.
Able Park said the same thing. This is the way that Able Park did it. You send it out, you give out an information, and you tackle the people who truly are interested first.
Right, but
Yeah.
we've
But
done
we would
that, right?
provide, no,
No,
we're
we
just,
just did
we're
it today.
just
Sorry.
announcing
Yeah,
it.
we just did
Oh,
it
okay.
today.
Got
Yeah.
it.
I just met with David like a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago.
Okay, all right, so we still don't know how much interest we have.
We don't.
I'm hoping we have a.
Application coming soon.
I was gonna say, Dan, are you interested? Dan, have you looked at David
Probably
Stubbs'
Wednesday.
stuff and saw-
Just because I've watched the curriculum meetings.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've I think any teacher is probably interested in making some changes. It's just a matter of what can they be,
Yeah, I mean, I also put a couple articles onto the announcement there.
Sorry.
I mean, it is a shift, it is a real shift to do that. So you have to be somebody who's okay with the unknown a little bit, and okay taking a risk and feeling like it's a little different, where we were most places, most of the rooms, and I think this is David's push too, there wasn't a teacher station.
One teacher goes, I have a station, I can't get rid of it. Like they were like, I'm not getting rid of
I'm not
this.
there yet.
Yeah.
I'm not there yet. But most of the rooms, it didn't look like that.
Your room, I think you really aren't ever at your desk, right?
This year I'm a little bit more. I really tried to get rid of it entirely. And it is hard because oftentimes you do need to sit down and do work.
You can get some really cool chairs though.
Yeah, you don't want to also give too much out there where you're ever doing anything to limit somebody's imagination. You want people to have their own thinking with like what you would be thinking of for science is going to be very different from what a world language teacher is going to be thinking.
And these are going to be, the goal of these are becoming showcase rooms, right? Like hopefully what's going to happen is
it grows.
People see it and go, oh my God, I really, first off, you're going to spend $20,000 on my room. Really? And you're also going to give me, embedded professional development from somebody who really truly knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's the district putting their money where their mouth is and making sure that we can, support where we are. Because David, I mean, he is brilliant.
He's an artist.
Yeah, he is. He can explain things to you in a very different way than what Karen and I can. That's for sure. So,
Can you talk just a little bit more about the PD end, like what it would look like?
Yeah, hold on.
As
Actually,
much as you know so far.
well, I could read you the 4-page summary that David sent me.
Yay.
So step one, we're going to create a plan prior to day one on site PD. So May 16th or 17th, we'll have an unpacking on the new lens. David uses through the looking lens, through the other side of the looking glass to kind of get people to start seeing
She
behind it.
says it's very
Yeah,
successful.
self-reflection, gameplay, creativity, and exploration between the how. Step 3, optional decluttering PD, streamlining education. We're looking into that. And then focusing on the physical, that's over in the summer. So then the teachers understand what they have already. And then they focus on the physical environment. It's a hands-on approach in correlating the why into the how. During this process, we will learn on the attribute of furniture selections, deeply working alongside staff to streamline the work. The scope of this day will need to be determined. As an example, 2 individual, 4 blocks, 1 hour, 7 blocks. So that's the next step. And then step 5 is a on-site PD wellness check. And this is just David, right? And then they're going to do that again.
I think that's it.
Yeah, that's
The
it.
last one that we
Yeah,
had in
just the
there.
last one. And then Karen
A little bit over the summer and then in the fall, a little bit
Yeah.
more. Okay.
Yeah.
Once in October,
But
once in summer.
There also is
Once we
PD,
decided.
but then there's also instructional PD components that the teachers are going to be required to do with Karen through the remainder of the year.
Okay.
So as
We're
April
just
Park
kind
did
of
it, like,
copycatting a little bit of
Yeah.
what April Park did that seemed successful.
because what they did is then they helped have a conversation about instruction and utilizing articles and things, so you can really have a full conversation. So you're not just getting the materials, then you're being able to talk about those materials and then share those materials and share out
And
what
share
you're
out our
doing
faculty.
with your faculty.
And that will be on the application.
And that was
Matt.
one thing that April Park was really proud of. The one science teacher we met, she showed us her whole presentation that she gave to her staff. It
Yeah.
was.
We shared that.
Yeah, we
right?
shared
Last
some.
time.
So it's a pretty intense kind of thing, but it gives a lot of ability.
And obviously, anybody, we would determine the summer date after the successful pilot teachers were chosen or figured out.
And we're trying to figure out, and let's ask you, since we have you all here, is what's your thoughts on this? So the successful pilot program, 2 to 4 people, right? So David will be working with them, but when David comes in, do you think we should offer it to maybe people like say 7 people applied? Should we offer to all 7 of those people to come and at least start having that initial conversation? Because we might not be able to do David again, right? Let's be honest. Like,
And to your point with the course, when somebody's asking for a course, well, maybe the pilot response that they gave wasn't, I don't know, wasn't clear enough or whatever, but maybe if you were able to do a second pilot, a second
and
round,
work
those
with
same people would be interested and they would have had the PD. I mean, that might be one way to.
So can I ask, based
Yeah, please.
on David's experience, is there a type of classroom in the 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 grades where this works better?
he really said it depends on what you're trying to do in the room, right?
Yeah.
It's the focus of where you want your room, not the classroom.
It probably also really depends on the
Teacher interest.
It does.
Because some teachers are not
We-
going to be
so
brave enough to
We
try.
saw a world
Yeah.
English teacher, oh my gosh. We saw a world English teacher,
Mhm.
English
Math
teacher,
was great.
math teacher, and science teacher.
Okay.
And the English teacher was
Mhm.
very clear saying this was the hardest for her,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
The science teacher was loving it. She actually got rid of her, she had a display component in her room. She had it completely ripped out. It was, completely gone. It looked like, when you walk in, it looked like a college room. It was,
Mhm.
different sections. The math teacher, I've never seen a math room look like that. You wouldn't have known what kind of classroom it was.
Yeah, his teacher desk was just a stand-up desk that kids are working over here. He just goes down, boom, brings it right down.
And it
scooches in
slides
slides
and
in,
matches up with
others,
the
and-
table as well.
Yeah.
Just, I have watched these meetings, but when you say we might not be able to get David, again,
Well, cost wise.
right, okay, but so, continue on with this, with the furniture, but we might not be able to have him as a consultant,
Right.
basically. Okay.
Well, I mean, hopefully the goal is we'll get train the trainers, right? As people get into this program, we're not gonna have to have somebody with this much expertise and knowledge. We'll have people of our own that really understand it, and hopefully we can get it built into the building, because
I think it's
you want it
exciting.
sustainable, right?
And will the teachers be able to go visit a classroom in another district that we can kind of bounce ideas off of?
I would hesitate.
Yeah, they were.
Why?
Because when we talked about this with David, you don't want what somebody else is doing to kind of dictate or kind of,
He was
How did he-
he was very much empowering of the staff members of their own creativity and
Mhm.
understanding. He didn't want any really kind of pigeonholing into other places, what
pigeonholing,
others
that's a good
doing.
word.
You know, and one thing he even said is like, he said to us, he goes, I think you guys should really mainstream some of your furniture, like streamline
Mhm.
some of your furniture. Like, he goes, I don't want to give you 1,000 different things and then your room's disorganized. He's like, I want to give you like 20 different things. And then here's the, then they can pick from those 20 different things. He goes, kind of the best options, but not the most expensive options.
Understand how they can be utilized and then,
So he was kind of really important on that. And again, he's works with Queensberry and Naval Park. So we already have those connections.
Okay.
And that might be something down the road, but I would look for him for that advice.
Okay.
Because he's rolled this out and he's rolled this out across the nation and all over the place.
Gotcha. I guess I always just like to see what other people that do what I do are doing.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they might have things that I don't even think of that I might want or need.
right,
And that might be like even after like 6 months, right?
Yeah.
Or an option afterwards, getting him paired up with it. Because the world language teacher we saw that room blew me away.
What they have.
So multiple desks. She had a station. They had this like, I love this like U thing with a bench on it, and then it's also like storage on the other side.
yeah, she was the one who did not have enough desks for everyone.
Yeah, that was the thing that was like, I don't need enough desks.
Yeah.
And she had, but the one thing she did have that I wasn't a real fan of, like 6 different types of chairs.
Oh, yeah,
It was
Yeah.
way too many different types of chairs for my liking. Wait until you see the types of student chairs you can get. They were all over the board.
Yeah.
And that was a lot for me. I thought that was a little bit too much. I feel like if we get into an argument, like what kid wants one, you're taking my chair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Other questions on this? These are good questions.
I don't think so.
If you want to read David's book, I have it. You can borrow it.
Okay, I mean,
He says it's very dry.
That's his opinion of it there.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not-
That's what I said. I go,
It's not
oh,
really a good sell.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I do have it if you want to borrow
awesome.
it. So we're guaranteeing 2 rooms.
Okay.
I'd like to see 4. Jim's probably gonna have a heart attack.
I was gonna say, just Jim, know you're saying 4.
He's,
The application will say at least 2.
well, I told Jim 6, so that didn't really work.
No.
I'd love to see this, like, we have a lot of, I can name 5 teachers in the middle school right now that I've seen already try to do flexible things in their rooms.
Yeah.
Like, I know there's people I think that are really willing to do this.
Yeah.
But they just haven't had the opportunity or support. I'd like to see.
Or even think that it's an option.
I would never thought it was an option until we saw it.
Yeah.
and I think, maybe maybe you said this in today's email, and I can't remember, off the top of my head, but I think it's okay for teachers to say, I would be interested in this, and then meet and say like, you know what, I'm not, this isn't for me. I'd like to try something else. Like, is that on there?
I'm not.
No, but this was a kind of,
No,
let's
but
get ready. Are you interested? Is this something you?
if
because
somebody
I would
submits
put
an
myself in that-
application.
I would put myself in that category. I'd be very interested in meeting, but teachers will, I do have a sense of what I want.
Right,
And,
that's what you already saw today.
oh yeah,
Yeah, no, but it throws you, it changes what your understanding of the classroom can be. And you don't have many desks, do you?
Oh, no, I have my desk.
Okay, but you have a teacher who has 0.
Yeah, the teacher next door doesn't have any at all.
It depends on how you teach.
One of the other reasons she said she likes it for is that way, there's a lot less of students, like hiding cell phones or things they're not
Mhm.
supposed to have because they don't have any kind of shield in front of them.
I like that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
takes that whole thing out of the equation.
All right, any other questions?
I can think of.
Go ahead.
Awesome.
All right.